Well, I just wanted to read this being our last class, we will have our student presentation. Are your people here yet? Everybody here? Okay, just 1 second. I'll give it over to you. Actually, you can come up and you can come up and start loading and getting ready. I can talk while you're doing that. Anyway, I was being a last day. Probably besides the student presentation, I'll probably maybe continue this theme. It's this young man, I think, is a great example to all of us in that there's another psychologist that explains that basically we all have a trigger in our brain that tells us don't do anything scary, and it's partly because it is a self-protection thing, that our brain says you could do something scary, you're going to hurt yourself, don't do it. And so whenever we think about doing something scary, and it doesn't have to be something life-threatening, it has to be something that, again, our emotions, our brain perceives as being scary, we hesitate and we start questioning ourselves, and it leads to procrastination, and it leads to us basically not making decisions or not following up on goals that we have already set because we just stall. We stall. We're afraid to move forward. And I think, like I said, this guy started doing door-to-door sales when he was 7 or whatever age it was, and built it up until he was, a millionaire at age 14. Obviously, not most of us do that. But I think he has some very important points to remember. One is that, everything we want is on the other side of fear. It's almost by definition. Anything big that you want is going to be on the other side of fear. And so, his perspective is you have to be afraid of fear, basically. You have to recognize that fear is one of your worst enemies. And that if you're not willing to encounter and move forward despite fear, your brain will give you lots of reasons not to go forward. It's just, like I say, it's built to do that. So your brain in some ways is not your best friend. And even your friends are not your best friends in many cases. You talk to many of the people in Silicon Valley who have made success, have become successful. Some of the people that tried to stop them, who said, you're wasting your time, were friends and relatives. Because they also are afraid that you will hurt yourself. And so their brains trigger in. They see their son or brother or sister or friend wanting to do something that's truly entrepreneurial and risky in some ways, and they don't want to see them hurt, so they say, don't do that. Just be like the rest of us. Just be normal. When I was working with migrant students in Washington State, that was, in essence, the biggest problem we had to overcome was the students' own parents in many cases. They were telling them, just drop out of school. You're not going to be anything. You can't do anything. You don't know the language very well. You're not very well educated. You're not going to go to university. You're not going to get a university degree. You're not going to do this. You're not going to do that. Just come out and work in the fields with us, and let's make some money, and we'll do it the old-fashioned way with hard work. And so 50% of all the migrant students dropped out of high school. But going through our our leadership training program, many of them realize they could envision then, after we put them through some exercises of how to set goals and how to accomplish those goals, how to set up stepping stone goals where a stepping stone is something you step on as you're trying to get across a river or something, or a creek, what we would call a small river, we call a creek. And so you're trying to get across the creek without getting your feet wet, and so you walk on these little stepping stones that are just a little bit above the water level, and if you don't fall in, you get across the other side dry. And so we call the goals that you set up to get to your big goal, your stepping stone goals. Most of us do look at any major goal as being almost impossible. And it's absolutely right that if you have a creek that is, 30 feet wide and 10 meters wide, you're not going to jump over it. You're not going to get across that creek without getting wet, because nobody in the history of mankind has ever jumped 10 meters. And so you're not going to be the first one, probably. Maybe someday somebody will, but it's probably not going to be you or me. And I know it won't be me. So you need the stepping stone goals. You can set up goals between where you are and where you want to be, and make sure those stepping stone goals are goals that are achievable. Each stepping stone is achievable. You know that each stepping stone is achievable. And so then it's a matter of being brave. It's a matter of having the courage to go from one stepping stone to another one, and to be inconvenienced, to work late at night, to do whatever you have to do to get to that next goal. And so you set out, you plan it out ahead of time. I want to fill in the blank. And so you start figuring out, okay, what would I have to do to get from here to there? We had forget his name now, but anyway, the billionaire, the self-made billionaire that was here on campus earlier in the year. He didn't even start his own business until he was about 40. But then by the time he was 50, he was a billionaire. But he did a lot of stepping stones, and maybe he didn't do it intentionally in every way, but they nevertheless were very smart stepping stones in education. He ultimately had he has his PhD, he has a master's degree, he's a civil engineer. He worked for somebody else. He learned from them, how to do, how to do development of real estate and so forth. And so in 10 years, he went from being somebody's employee to being a billionaire. So those are rational steps. Education is a rational step. Working for somebody else for a while to find out how to do the job is a rational step. Now, it's not always necessary, like Farrah Gray showed us in the video. He started his career when he was 7 years old and was a millionaire by the time he was 14. So you don't necessarily have to have a great education. You have to not be afraid, though, of moving forward. He obviously has great personality and so forth, and that's great. And not most of us maybe can't compete with his social intelligence. But he's not the only success story, and there's plenty of people who are introvert, who are not outgoing like him or like my brother or people like that, that can become successful in their own way of doing it. It's not because they have great social intelligence. It's because they have set their stepping stones, and they have gone from first to last until they got what they wanted to get. Very frequently, in my other class, my success strategies class, for example, I share a video by Robert Kiyosaki. Some of you may have heard him before. He wrote a book called Rich Man, Poor Man, or Rich Dad, Poor Dad, excuse me. And it compares his dad, who was a brilliant man, to the dad of his best friend, who had very little education. His dad became the head of all the education system of all of the state of Hawaii. He had a PhD. He was a brilliant man. And he died essentially poor because he didn't know how to invest his money. Whereas his friend's dad didn't have much education, but he learned one thing: how to invest in real estate. That's all he learned. And so he went out and started investing, and he became, very rich. Without an education, because he, first off, had the courage to do it. But he also had he had the courage not only to start, but he built a specialized understanding, which is also one of the recommendations for somebody who wants to succeed, is become a specialist in something. Become the best at something. You don't have to be the best at everything. You become the best at something. And thus, it's not being a millionaire, but thus I've talked a little bit about my friend Dennis, who had very bad grades in high school, became a college instructor in mechanics because he found what he was really good at, mechanics. And so he became, so even though he would never, teach a class in English, he would never teach a class in math, he would never teach a class in the stuff that we normally take in school, he was an expert mechanic and was hired to teach that at a college level. So we set our stepping stones and we can accomplish amazing things. But it does start with having a realistic, well, I'm afraid to even use that word. Realistic isn't the right word. It can be somewhat unrealistic, if you would, but a goal that is doable, that if you have enough, if you can figure out the stepping stones, how to get from here to there, and have the courage to do it, you can do it. And then you have to have the courage to do each one of them. And the commitment and courage to do them. And that's really the key to setting up stepping stone goals. Is make sure that every one is achievable. You can take 12 steps to get to where you want to go, or 24 steps. It doesn't matter how many steps it takes. You set up those stepping stone goals in such a way that you know that if you work hard, you can do this stepping stone, you can do that one. And maybe some of them are a little bit of leap of faith in the sense that one of them might be education, and you might say, okay, I'm pretty sure that if I get this education, I can do this. It's not a given, but you should have certain expectations. So in some cases, it may not be absolutely every stepping stone is absolutely going to be exactly what the outcome is, may not be exactly what you want it to be. And therefore, when you're done with that stepping stone, if you find out, gee, this is not leading where I want to go, then you have to maybe take another stepping stone. And so you set another stepping stone, and you make a little bit of a change in course. There's a psychologist. I think he may be sociologist, but anyway, he's done experiments with goal setting and stuff. And one of the things he found is that he said if he tells somebody, I want you to walk from here to that corner in a straight line. Well, let's say there's chairs already there. Want to walk from here to there in a straight line. And so the person starts walking, and then he puts a chair in front of them. He will automatically go around that chair and keep going to that point because he was told to get to that certain point. But if he says, choose some place to go, walk to, and walk there. And so they start walking at kind of some vague direction, and he puts a chair in front of them, they just stop. They don't know what to do because they don't really have a strong goal of where they had to go. And so they don't figure out a way to get around that chair. The rules are different suddenly, and so they just stand there. But if they have very specific instructions, I want you to go there, then they will simply go around the chair. And his point is that that's the way we are with goals. That if we really have a strong goal and we set that goal, then we will do whatever is necessary to go around whatever obstacle to get to that goal. If we have kind of a vague goal, we don't really know what we want, and somebody puts an obstacle in front of us, we're paralyzed. We don't know what to do. Because our goal isn't strong enough. Our vision isn't strong enough. And so part of, again, what he's saying is we need to visualize, getting where we want to go. We need to go there and do it no matter what the obstacles are. We find a way. And so if it's setting another stepping stone goal, we set another stepping stone. In the analogy of getting across the river, we get another stepping stone, and we just go around whatever obstacle, and we still proceed. Our goal doesn't change. Our stepping stone goals may have to change, but that doesn't mean we have to change our end goal. We just have to change our stepping stone goal, and so we go ahead. I say it can be very scary. I bought my first newspaper, as I said, when I was 25. That was scary. We were talking yesterday. I don't know if any of you are in Luis's documentary class, but we were talking about that. It kind of came up in a roundabout way. But I had to learn a lot of stuff I had no idea how to do. If you had asked me, are you qualified to take over this newspaper, and told me everything I had to do, I would have said, no, I'm not qualified. There were things that had to be done in owning your own newspaper that I did not have a clue how to do. So I had to learn them. I had to overcome those obstacles. I knew I was good at some aspects of it. And I felt confident that I could improve the quality of the newspaper. But I didn't know darkroom work. Just a little bit. I had a little bit of training in darkroom work. And in those days, to take your publication to production, to the press, you had to do more darkroom work than just developing photos. I think I mentioned before, photos, when they're published, have to be turned into halftones. You have to know the right way to turn it into halftones. And I may have mentioned that I did it wrong one time. The photos looked good to me, but all the dots that were making up this halftone were gray. They weren't really black. And when I took them to press, all those photos disappeared, basically. I had a full page of nothing. Very embarrassing. Very embarrassing. But I learned my lesson. And I didn't do that again. And so, some lessons as you're going from here to there and you're taking those stepping stones will be failures. Indeed, you may fall into the creek at some point and have to get back up, dry yourself off, and keep going. But it goes back to not being afraid to do it, and not being afraid to proceed, and even if it means, again, changing your stepping stone goals, whatever you have to do, you just can't be afraid. You just have to keep going, whatever that is. But so, as Farrah Gray was saying, for those that were here during that video, you have to be afraid of fear. You should concentrate on making that your number one fear. To be afraid of fear, because if you're afraid of, as he said, your greatest accomplishments are on the other side of fear. So if you want to get there, you have to confront fear. That's pretty much universal in achieving success in life. So, okay, if the team's ready student team wants to come up, let's get going on that. As I said, I forgot my microphone, so please speak up loudly. For the video, the microphone's built into the computer. There's an empty one over here. Do this, they will see that, but you will see this. I'll put this right here on top of the next slide, and if you have notes, they will show up here. Okay. And turn it down if you need to get your head in there, so we can see you in the video. Okay. Okay. So it's still running. So again, I forgot the microphone, so just speak loudly if you could.
Okay. And how to get the next slide?
Just
if I
right
click.
Here.
Oh, okay. Good morning, everyone. Today we are going to talk about the media and human well-being. Before it begins, let me introduce the presenters by the order we present. I'm Huang Zihang. This is Zhou Su Jiayue, and this is Wang Yufei. Let me ask a question first. How can we be happy? If we are well-fed, joy-filled, and guilty-free, we are quite likely to be happy. There are three conditions for people to be happy here. The first is material well-being, that is being well-fed, clothed, and sheltered. The second is sincere well-being, that is feeling in physical sense good. The third is spiritual well-being, that is having a sense that we are acting rightly in relation to our fellows and the universe. The media and material well-being. The order that media improved our material well-being of humankind, it shows below here. 1. We know that we are much better off, materially speaking. In this period, the standards of living have risen. 2. We know why we are better off. In this period, we improved economic productivity. 3. We know why economic productivity has improved. In this period, our ancestors improved tools, media among them. Then we would feel self-satisfied, which means material happy. The part 1, economic base and population fluctuation. In purely material terms, we live in a gold age. From the micro level perspective, our income is growing. At first, the average person earned the equivalent of about $500 per year. Today, he or she earns more than $7,000. Here's a chart that shows the fluctuation of world GDP. As you can see, the people earns grows year by year. Explosion in world population. At first, there were roughly 170 million people on Earth. In the year 2000, there were more than 6 billion. Here's a world population chart from 5000 BC to at 2000. As you can see from the chart, world population grew very fast from at 1,800 to at 2,000. It shows here in this area. Income and population. In short term, it may work as that more pie eaters would mean less pie per person. But in fact, in long term, more pie eaters means more pie per person. In a conclusion, the number of pie eaters grew, the amount of pie grew faster. In this part, the pie eaters means population, the pie means income. Then, how to improve economy productivity? First, increase the labor and capital. Second, improve the tools to make pies, which is also the most powerful way to do. The tools means technical level, the pie means income. Part 2, technology and innovation. Using technology to improve our material life. Technology has been driving improved productivity for a very long time. Pre-modern population giving ability, labor, capital, and technology to improve our material life. Here's a short video about the modern science and the technology change.
Whenever we go to videos, I normally tell people don't do it until the end.
There are 3 explanations for the rising of human rate of innovation over time. 1. There are more of us innovating now than then, which means more innovators meaning more innovations. 2. Each of us is more individually more innovative now than then, which means better innovators meaning more innovations. 3. Some combination of the answer 1 and 2. Technology level and growth rate. Population is an indirect measure of technology level and growth rate. The degree to which the population increases is a measure of improvement in technology. The rate at which it increases is a measure of the rate of that improvement. Second, the production and the accumulation of new technologies themselves is a direct measure of technology level and the growth rate. There are more of us innovating now than then. Each of us is individually more innovative now than then. The next is product of accumulation. For example, when our ancestors invented something useful, they reminded it and passed it on, but much more of it has to do with a rising rate of innovation over time. The change in innovation rate. For the first 150,000 years of human existence, the tiniest fraction of the species-wide rate of innovation is above 0. Now it's around 50 innovations per year. The rate of innovation in human history. Here's a chart. From the statistical table, you can see there is an explosion period of innovation, which is around the add 1000 to add 2000, which means it shows in the last line of the chart. Okay. There are two important innovations here. First is spawn new modes of production. The second is discontinuously greater productivity. Part 3. 5 apical technical innovation. The first is behavior revolution. The second is architectural revolution. The third is capitalist revolution. The fourth is industrial revolution. The fifth is information revolution. Before we start, let's watch a short video about several major innovations have shaped the way we communicate to give us a good example of technical innovation in our lives.
How to do that? I lost the page.
If you are interested in the video, you can go search the person's YouTube channel and get more information about it. Let's move on. Behavior revolution. It's circa from 50,000 BC to 10,000 BC. It's so-called the emergence of behaviorally modern humans. The rate of innovation in this period rose from 0.0001 innovations per year to 0.0033 innovations per year. During this era, we perfected old stones and created many new ones out of new materials. For example, the materials are bones, antler, ivory, shells, pigment, and so on. The second is architectural revolution. It's circa from 10,000 BC to at 1000. It's so-called the introduction of crop cultivation and animal husbandry. The rate of innovation in this period rose from 0.006 innovations per year to 0.295 innovations per year. During this era, we perfected the plow and the sickles, bricks and the mortar, the spindle and the loom, the yoke and the harness, mining and the metallurgy, and writing and the papyrus. The next is capitalist revolution. It's circa from at 1000 to at 1700. It's so-called the growth of market-oriented production and trade. The rate of innovation in this period rose from 0.52 innovations per year to 4.85 innovations per year. During this era, we perfected or invented stirrups, heavy plows, water wheels, flywheels, windmills, pumps, and so on. Here's the Industrial Revolution. It's circa from at 1700 to at 1940. It's so-called the introduction of artificially powered production and trade. The rate of innovation rose from 5.8 innovations per year to 30.2 innovations per year in this period. During this era, we perfected or invented all manner of energy sources, energy transmission devices, engines, and build them into machines of every kind. The last is Information Revolution. It's circa from at 1940 to present. It's so-called the introduction of artificially powered control of production and trade. The rate of innovation rose from 22 innovations per year to 40 innovations per year. During this era, we perfected or invented all manner of information storage, transmission, and manipulation machines, particularly the computer. What do these 5 periods have in common? There are 2 things. First, during each of them, the productivity, population, and the innovation rate grew together. The second thing is these 5 eras shares is that each gave birth to a new, more powerful medium. Here's a chart of innovation rate, population, and productivity chart, shows on the right side of the slide. As you can see, these 3 things grew together during a long time in history. Part 4, Speech Network and Internet Network. The speech network will be connected, which means everyone will be privy to everyone else's messages. Symbolic, which means messages will be encoded. Constrained, which means messages will be short. Intensive, which means there will only be a relative few nodes in the network. Substitutive, messages won't accumulate very well. The internet network will be in the future. Here's segmented. Messages can be hidden or shared. Iconic. Messages can be pictures and words. Unconstrained. Messages can be very small or very large. Extensive. Messages can reach to a few people or millions. Additive. Messages can be saved for later reference. Some facts of the media and productivity. First, in truth, we didn't really begin to benefit materially from better media and better networks until quite recently. Second, increased productivity isn't efficient if it only leads to increased reproductivity. Second, population is connected with the evolution of the media. To understand how the demographic transition and the development of the media are connected, we need to address the role that media have played or not played in enhancing our sincere well-being. So next, we will have Zhou Su to share some facts about sincere well-being.
Then I will discuss media and sensory well-being. Measuring changes in material well-being is simple, but measuring changes in sensory well-being is more difficult, because it is not clear what we should count, or even there is anything to count. The thing we want to count when measuring long-term sensory well-being is safe novelty. But how much safe novelty is there? How fast is the amount of it changing? The best way to begin answering these questions is to measure variety. Variety is the root of all novelty. We might think of variety as potential novelty. The greater the variety available, the more novelty one can potentially experience. So it's simple to say that in order to experience new things, you need new things. The amount of variety has increased since we evolved 180,000 years ago. We transformed from a single culture into thousands of different cultures. So cultural variety increased. We transformed the simple agriculture society with a few rules into a diverse society with thousands of rules. So the social variety increased. We employed professionals to analyze and catalog the network universe. So the natural variety increased. And also we employed professionals to imagine fictive world. Thus the stock of imaginary variety grew. Not only the variety, but also the rate at which we are producing variety is increasing as well. We know this because the rate of variety production is a function of several other kinds of production, all of whose rates are increasing. Then we will review three kinds of the variety production: production of stuff, production of people, and production of innovations. Rising rates of productivity allowed us to produce more stuff with fewer resources. More stuff means more different stuff. So, rising productivity created more variety. Rising rates of population growth means more people each year. More people means more different people. So, rising rates of population growth created more variety. Rising rates of innovation means more innovations each year. More innovations means more different tools. So, rising rates of innovations created more variety. We hardly need add that, since productivity, population, and innovations are part of a positive feedback loop, the economic growth cycle. Their upward movement drives the general rate of variety production. If the one grew exponentially, so did the other. The reason of all these trends grow together at roughly the same rate is improved technology, and only improved tools can increase productivity indefinitely. So, what does it mean? It means that both the level of variety and the rate of variety have been increasing. But pay attention, variety is not novelty, it is only potential novelty. Only actual novelty contributes to our sensory well-being. Potential novelty doesn't. There might be a lot of variety, but it can be nothing unless you get to it or have it brought to you. Here is where the media work their unique magic, for they can transform variety into novelty. The media enable you to record, reproduce, and distribute experiences of variety to others, thus transforming potential novelty into actual novelty. The media put us all in each other's hand. Media did so to different degrees, largely depending on technical attributes and the networks that flow from them. For example, let's compare manuscript writing and the internet. The writing network will be concentrated. People won't be full on it because of the high cost of learning to read and write well. It may be symbolic. Messages will be encoded. It is constrained because messages will be short. It is monologic. Messages will move slowly. And finally, it is unmapped because messages will be hard to find. Now let's look at an internet network. It is diffuse. Everyone can get it. It is iconic because messages can include words, pictures, and sounds. It may be unconstrained because messages can be long. It is dialogic. Messages will move rapidly. Last but not least, it is unmapped because messages will be easy to find. Above all, there is no question that the internet is a marvelous tool for exchanging experiences. Experience-bearing messages can be widely distributed and easily understood. They can be text, pictures, and sounds. They can be as short or long as you like, and if lost, they can be recovered simply. So there is no question that the Internet is a machine for turning variety into novelty. Media put us all in each other's heads, but it took a very long time for media to get there, from talk to manuscript and book, and then print, audiovisual media, and finally the Internet. The development has taken for many centuries. The appearance of the audiovisual media and the Internet in the 20th century accelerated and amplified the process. They allow more experiences of different kinds to flow more rapidly through larger networks. And for the first time in human history, we began to enter each other's hands, to surf through each other's senses in very large numbers. The author noticed an interesting parallel between the timing of the takeoff of material well-being and the timing of the takeoff of sensory well-being. Both happened in the 19th century. Marshall saw the correlation has a causation. He explained that the growing access to media contributed to the decline in fertility. When fertility began to decrease, the material well-being began to improve. Of course, correlation is not causation. Media demand time and money both directly and indirectly, and having children also takes time and money. They're all time sucks, as we sometimes say. If time sucked is right before you and your partner fall asleep, it might have a direct impact on your fertility. Late-night television is a kind of birth control. Moreover, they are money sacks. They change the way you behave and how you allocate your time and money generally. In 2017, eMarketer estimates that U.S. adults will average 12 hours, 7 minutes of media usage every day. The newspaper reading Victorians choose to have fewer children, and Internet surfing moderns even choose to have no children. In addition, young adults don't want to have a family. To them, a family means less time on the Internet, less money on the video games, and less freedom on gratification. If present trends continue, the web will have to serve itself. Then it is not hard to imagine why the media can affect the fertility. Next, my partner Yu Fei and I will continue to discuss media and spiritual well-being. Like sensory well-being, spiritual well-being is difficult to access. Religious people may say that spirituality has something to do with proximity to the divine. And others, especially people who are spiritual and not religious, they may say spirituality has something to do with serenity, peace of mind, or enlightenment. And still other people, especially hardcore atheists, they just dismiss the notion as metaphysical mumbo-jumbo. Above all, there seems to be something about the definition of spirituality that puts it beyond the realm of senses and the realm of what we can know. For the traditional believer, the New Age spiritualist, and the tough-minded atheist agree on the following. First, many people believe that they have spirits. Whether spirits come from beyond, as the believer would say, a bond of spiritual practice, as the spiritualist would say, or are inventions, as the atheist would say, is irrelevant. Second, whatever the origin of the claim, most people report the presence of a spirit as a state of mind. A state of spiritual well-being is not body pleasure, nor is a state of spiritual sickness bodily pain. Rather, the one and the other are qualities of mind. Someone in good spirits will be clear, calm, and confident, and someone in poor spirits are confused, agitated, and fearful. Finally, most people explain that the spiritual state is the result of their relationship with something greater than themselves that lies beyond their comprehension. This mysterious higher power might be God, the natural world, and the society. Again, all that matters is that this is what they believe to be the case. Then I will pass it to my partner, Wang Yufei.
Let's continue media and spiritual well-being. So what is spiritual well-being? Spiritual well-being is a mental quality that often results when people believe they are doing right things in relation to some transcendental something. And have the media made us feel spiritually any better? The answer is no, because we know that our spiritual well-being is arise when we believe we are doing the right things in relation to some transcendental something, and we know that the media encourage us to do the wrong thing, and that modern media encourage us to do the wrong thing more often. And have the media contribute to our spiritually well-being? The answer also is not. So why is the media do not make us feel spiritually better? The first reason is the media have directly contributed to our economic growth but allowed us to ignore spirituality questions. Nietzsche said, if we have our own way of life, we shall get along with almost any hope. The unseen world gives the pre-modern people the way of life and thereby enable them to suffer their difficult whole of life, thanks in part to the media and the economic explosion. This facilitated we live in material customers that no longer occur or even any attention to spiritual affairs. The second reason is media have directly contributed to our disenchantment by encouraging us to think in the wrong way. Plato said, uniquely among human tools, the media enable us to create society worlds where the rules of man and God somehow do not apply. That makes we believe that we can do anything we believe in society worlds without real panels, and the media representation are not harmless to those who consume them. So, how to achieve spiritual well-being? We should do the right thing and think the right thought. Finally, the media has contributed to our disenchantment by encouraging us to act in the wrong way. And there will be a question. Representation of bad things make people do bad things? The Plato's answer is yes, but modern researchers say no. The conclusion is that depends on what we understand by bad things, and there will be a controversy. Exposure to pornography does not seem to make men more likely to commit rape, but exposure to pornography does seem to make men more likely to masturbate, and indeed masturbate compulsively. And the media also express self-harm. For example, you know you are supposed to treat people kindly, yet you abuse others in chat rooms. You know you are supposed to study, but you watch TV instead. You know your work computer is for work, but use it to surf the web. And next is media knock-on effect. For example, watching the reality show jackass is not a bad thing until it causes you to hurt someone while acting like a jackass. Send a text message while driving is not a bad thing until it causes you to injure someone in a car accident. Listen to Whitney Houston sing "I Will Always Love You" 100 times in a row is not a bad thing until it drives your neighbors insane. And next we'll talk about Marx's beliefs in spiritual well-being. Marx believes that the future will bring an era of incredible material abundance using advanced new tools. Some do almost effortlessly produce all the necessity of existence. We need not work very hard to acquire all the food, clothing, shelter, and sundry accessories we would ever reasonably desire. We to live in a new world of things, but we would not also live in a new world of them. And this is there is Marx believes Marx new world of things are our new world of things. Marx believes new world of things is making and consuming. People often find meaning in their work, and they enjoy the stuff they and others makes. And our new world of things is encoding and decoding. People turn to decoding and decoding things when they desire of meaningful work. And the conclusion is that the media, and particularly the modern media, contributes massively to our material well-being. They were among the tools that produced the new world of things and improved our sensory well-being. They enable us to break free from our own sense and experience an astonished material of things through the sense of others, but it has had a rather less positive impact on our spiritual well-being. It has made us turn away from spiritual matters and has promoted us to compulsively think and do things that plainly injure our spirits. And let's turn to question part.
It's about the first part of my presentation, which is true about the explosion of population. A. The year at first there were roughly 160 million people on Earth. B. The number of world population in at 2000 were about 3.7 times that of the at 1000 of the 19 years. C. The world population didn't grow during 2800 BC to 2200 BC. D. The at 1800 there were less than 19 million people on Earth. And the correct answer is B. To answer this question, you must refer the chart which I showed before in the population part of the present. The second question is, which is not true about the 5 applicable technical innovation according to the book? You can choose more than one option. 曹日文 answer this question. A. Okay. The correct answer is A and E. The A is in the behavioral revolution. The average avenue growth rate was 1.75%, meaning the number of innovations would double every 40 years. The E is the most important innovation in the information revolution is computer. This two is not true, because the most important invention in the information revolution didn't mention before. So let's move to the next part question.
Question 1. If time sucked is right before you and your partner fall asleep, it might have a direct impact on your fertility. The answer is true. And the second question. Which of the following statements is not true? A. The greater the variety available, the more novelty one can potentially experience. B. Sensory well-being is more difficult to measure. C. Nowadays, we produce less stuff with more resources, which indicates that writing productivity created more variety. The answer is C. And the last question. Which of the following options are features of an internet network? You can select more than one response. A. Diffuse, B. Unmapped, C. Unconstrained, D. Dialogic, and E. Symbolic. The answer is A, C, and E, and D.
So, question is which of the following statements is not true? A. Media has indirectly contributed to our economic growth but allowed us to ignore spiritually view question. B is media has directly contributed to our disenchantment by carrying us to think in one way. And C is the media has contributed to our disenchantment by encouraging us to act in one way. And D is media has contributed to our spiritual well-being. So the answer is D. And the next question is how media contribute to our disenchantment by carrying us to act in one way. A is media inspired self-harm, and B is media locked-on effect, and C is media inspired bad things. And the answer is A and B. Okay, these are our references.
Okay. That's all about our presentations. Thank you.
Number, what order you were in, so I don't get confused. So just put 1, 2, 3, whoever in the order that you presented. Save a copy of this. I for sure have it. I think before I make some comments, we don't have a lot of time, but I think as it ties into this, perhaps the best video to view right now would be one by Peter Diamandis. Some of you may have already seen that. But I'm going to go ahead and play it again. It's something to think about as you think about the future, about spirituality, about well-being, and so forth. I think he has a quite enlightening perspective on it. I have a copy on my website, so I'll just go there and play it from there. So just a couple of comments beyond that. I think if you were listening to this, I hope you felt inspired. The future, I mean, he was saying this, I think it was like 2010 or something. And already, again, we've talked a little bit about what has happened since 2010. The smartphones really, they were invented, but they really didn't get going in 2012. He's talking about the Maasai warrior in the middle of Africa or whatever. Things are spreading actually faster than he predicted they would. Now almost everybody has a smartphone. And that one instrument is a source of great education, great power. There's so many things that can come just from this little instrument that, as he said, probably a king in the 18th century would have given at least half his kingdom for this. This has more power in it, more information in it than what was accessible by President Clinton just a couple of decades ago. And you have it. It's right here. That it's he had a figure there that I was thinking about stopping the video, but this is more powerful. I think he's 1,000 times more powerful and 10,000 less expensive than the biggest computer in the world in the early 1970s. This, and you have it. That poverty has had to be redefined because poor people in America have things that kings would die for, practically. They would, again, give half their kingdom for what a poor person in America has already. And so what is poverty now? It's something totally different than, obviously poverty in America is different than poverty in some other countries. But what American poor people have is moving across the world with all this innovation and access to information and so forth. So poverty in all the countries is being redefined. Not maybe yet to the extent it has been in America, but in all countries it's being redefined. There's another TED.com speaker has given several speeches. I'm trying to come up with his name, but he talks about, he's gathered all the health data and he shows the progress of health in the world year by year by year. And it's amazing that people, in countries that were in the depth of poverty a decade ago are as healthy as Americans in some cases. I think I put on, I think in my other class that, Malaysian health is better than some of the more developed countries. The child death rate and stuff is much better. And yet Malaysia is not, perceived as being, a highly developed country, but in health-wise it has progressed tremendously, over the last, couple of decades. So the world is changing, and as he mentioned, the world of abundance is right here. It's so close. That's one reason why I think people who are worried about global warming are a little bit hysterical. It is not progressing like they predicted, nowhere close to it. In fact, right now, people in America are freezing practically. But more importantly is what he was talking about, solar energy and so forth. We're right at the edge. That technology will solve the problem. And of course, there's some debate over exactly what is being caused by human beings and what is being caused by, natural sources, and that's a whole other thing, another argument won't get into. But even if it is even if a large percent of it is made by humankind, we're right at the edge of solving the problem. And it will happen naturally, because if solar electricity is half the cost of coal electricity, who's going to bother to buy coal electricity? Coal generated, nobody will. And so solar will sweep across the globe, and the fossil fuels will disappear. So it's, we are, as I said, living in an amazing time. There are, I think, grave concerns. The abundance that we have could cause us to become one of the most intellectual, most blessed generations of all time. Or we could become hedonistic like the ancient Romans that destroyed their empire, where we're sitting around trying to figure out how to entertain ourselves and do so in ways that are not positive. You can imagine there are, some movies about, now turning the criminals into combatants to watch live to the death fights and stuff like that. Who knows where we go from when abundance is all around us. Do we become lazy? Do we take advantage of the opportunities that will be at our at our feet. And in a sense, you're already there. You have incredible opportunities, and the future has even, like I say, even greater opportunities. While I'm definitely not a Marxist, as you would probably guess, being an American, although there are lots of Marxist Americans, but it talks about the Marx vision. Obviously, Marxism has gone through a rough time. I mean, the Soviet Union collapsed because their version of Marxism didn't work. China has totally redone its economy because of that. They saw what happened to the Soviet Union. They were smarter than the Soviets, and they adapted their economy to a more of a free market economy. But on the other hand, when the day comes when robots are doing everything, will we have to have more of a Marxist system in order to equalize, in order for people to survive? Well, what will they have to do? They'll be doing things that are not, definitely there will be no need for manual labor. And so anybody who wants to be lazy and be a manual laborer, sorry, you don't have a job anymore. Because robots can do it better than you. So you have to get smart, or what do we do with you? So the world society will have to change. Even as much of a capitalist as I am, but even that has dangers with it. There are plenty of examples of Marxist type societies where basically there's a dictatorship of the few, not really of the proletariat. That the few have dictated and have prevented progress rather than enhancing progress. Of course, that also happens with other systems too, because we have human beings, and the most hated of all human beings should be politicians. I think I'm being a little bit sarcastic, but politicians can really screw things up, and whatever society they're in. I'm not just talking Marxism now. I'm talking American. I think that's one thing that WikiLeaks has demonstrated, is that American leadership has been false and deceptive and self-interested. So it's not a problem. It is a reality that well, the saying is absolute power corrupts absolutely. People who gain positions of power cannot be trusted. Do not use that power in a bad way. And so we have challenges ahead of us that are very different, because those of us who are not in power could be replaced by robots. That's a problem. It could be a problem, depending who's in power. So there are some grave dangers in the future, and there's some amazing possibilities and it will really depend on us to determine that future, both in a political sense and in our own innovation, how we employ the possibilities that are ahead of us in our own lives. I guess the most important thing I think at this point is that you individually take on the challenge to be productive. His example of the lady, showing how to fold proteins or whatever, that's one of the amazing things about what we're seeing currently in the positive side of things like Wikipedia. That's put all the encyclopedia companies out of business. And it's all, on one of the other TED.coms, the founder of Wikipedia, this was a few years ago, but at that time, he was explaining how Wikipedia started and stuff, and at that time, he said basically the company had one employee. And they only paid him, he didn't ask for it to be paid. But he was giving so much of his free time, he was kind of a geek running their computer system. He was giving so much of his free time that they took pity on him and please take a job. Do this as a job. We'll pay you to do what you're doing free. We don't want you to work yourself to death. We want you to have a real life. And so out of mercy, they employed one person. And yet it's become a tremendous information source for all mankind. He was talking about Salman Khan, who has created the Khan Academy, provided free education to the world, amazing education. If you haven't gone there, if you haven't used it, you should. It is mostly high school oriented, or up to high school anyway, but the fact that there are teachers in America who are letting him do their teaching, and they're doing what they call flipping the classroom, to where in class they can do projects, they can do other stuff because they assign Salman Khan and his associates to teach them because they're better teachers than our teachers in the classroom. They're amazing teachers. And they use the technology better than the average teacher can. So they're flipping the classroom. Let's do projects. Let's talk about this stuff, and so forth. And they're letting Salman Khan do the teaching. And that will spread. It's been talked about that we are going into an era where we may very well have kind of like superstar educators and superstar news people. And so you could be a superstar journalist. I think I may have mentioned this before. I got to know this guy named Jack Anderson, who had a tremendous network of you might call them spies, I don't know, a network of information, where he bragged that he would know a lot of things before the President of the United States knew them, because he was intercepting the information from not the top people, but his layer was things like secretaries, and he would intercept the information at the lower level before it got to the U.S. President. And so he did a daily investigative report and that he spread to 900 newspapers and outlets around the world. And so we may be in an era of superstar journalists. One of you may be that superstar. And certainly, as Salman Khan has become a superstar educator. Amazing person. I think he's born in America, but he's Bangladesh, I think. I can't remember what his parents were from. But the world is becoming international, and the possibilities are unimaginable. What Wikipedia did, unimaginable. As this Kelly that we watched his video a while back said, who would have taken a business plan to a bank and said, oh yeah, we're going to do this Wikipedia thing? They would have laughed at him, because it was impossible to think that people would volunteer their time to create the world's greatest encyclopedia. That far surpasses anything that any company's ever made before. And nobody got paid for it. And we've got these amino acid folders, and we've got all sorts of stuff going on. If that's the future of the world, that's amazing. And it can be. Or we could be a Roman society of hedonistic, lazy bums, and destroy ourselves. But that's really up to us as people. So, anyway, it's been a pleasure to teach you this semester. Get your stuff in by your deadlines and stuff, and we will. I'll get them graded and get your final score in as soon as I can. Okay. Well, thank you.